Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Civil War Monitors Behind the Lines. I'm your host, David Thompson. Today, it's my privilege to be joined by Michael Frost Beckner, who is the creator, writer, and executive producer of Appomattox, a future miniseries event here, and I'm really excited to hear more about this from Michael himself. So, Michael, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you, David. Thank you for having me. This is really great.
Well, we are on the cusp here of some very exciting movement for you in terms of kicking off your campaign for this work. So I wondered, for those who perhaps know nothing about Appomattox or know very little about this miniseries event, if you could just give us kind of a background of what this is really all about.
Yes, I certainly will. It's been a long road. It's actually been a lot longer than the Civil War, and half the time being just one soldier, it felt like a pretty tough battle. Yeah. But we are almost ready to make the first 2 hours, and we're very excited about this. 12 years ago, however, it started as something entirely different. And I was going to attempt to write a two-man play about Grant and Lee called To Appomattox. And Jason O'Mara, who still is with us and is playing Ulysses Grant, was going to star as Grant. Will Patton, who had been with the project for a while, he was the perfect Lee, and we were very excited to have him. And we were going to put it on at the University of Richmond. And probably a year out, I was over there. We started to make the arrangements, set some dates up. I'd never done theater before. Most of my career has been in motion pictures. Then I moved into television about 10, 11 years ago. And motion picture deadlines, motion pictures take a long time. Movies, that you get a lot of time and leeway to get your job done. Television has a little more stringent time requirements. Theater, I don't know how anyone does it because it is so strict with the timing and when you have to be in rehearsal, when you do the run-through, when you do it. You already planned these dates a year out. I found as I started researching and writing it, I was never going to make these dates. These windows were just too short. And I also found when I was writing it that I wanted to tell a whole lot more than just the story of those two men. What it had been was the play was based around the 4 times they met during their lives. In the Mexican War, then again at the surrender, the day after the surrender, and then just prior to Robert E. Lee's death, he paid a visit to Grant at the White House. And it's one of those meetings, for some reason, no one went in with a pen and paper. It was a private meeting, and typically at the White House, that's not really what happens. So no one really knows what they said for those 20 minutes. And as a playwright, that's a great starting point. A lot of historical plays take a moment and look at it from all different angles and what it could be. What we do know of that moment, there was they were talking about railroads as they were walking into the meeting. Lee was working on a railroad project, and Grant had, in his presidency, tried to make a railroad connecting Mexico and the United States. So there was some conversation about railroads. Grant's oldest son was there, and he took some notes before they went in. And Robert E. Lee's eldest son, I think it was his eldest son, had brought him there, and he wrote about his father's reaction afterwards. So I had a little bit of grist for the mill, and I thought, this is going to be great. But as I start peeling back the onion and finding how did we get to this moment, and going back to those other prior moments, I found there's too much of a story here to tell. Now, I have made a career out of writing history, historical dramas, mostly military, and espionage. My main career is writing espionage. I was raised with my family, but primarily my grandmother was a huge influence in my life. And over the fireplace was our Confederate ancestors. And from very young age, I was told whenever Dixie's played, you stand like you do for the national anthem. I didn't know any better. Somehow we heard it, but thankfully I grew up in Studio City, California. They didn't ever play Dixie because I would have jumped to my feet and every kid would have laughed at me and it would have been a little strange. But in my household, Robert E. Lee is one of the greatest Americans next to George Washington. So when I approached the whole project, I didn't know much about Grant except probably every erroneous fact that was ever said about him, about a heavy alcoholic and a butcher of men and all these sort of things. When I read his memoir, and it's as a writer, obviously I do gobs of reading, and what I found with that, and I understood why it was so popular so quickly and for so long, because after about 10 or 15 pages, you can hear his voice. It's almost as if he's speaking to you. And I started to realize, wow, that guy had a really bad publicist. Robert E. Lee has had a great publicist for all these years. Grant has had a terrible one. And these men are very much equal opposites. And that's where it started to form for me, and I realized it's my perspective on the Civil War was a little bit flawed and didn't allow for anything from the sort of lost cause world I grew up in, even though it was Studio City, California. And so I took that and I started working with that, and then it's started to get involved and intrigued by their families and who was around them. And the thing that's so great for a writer, a dramatist with these stories, is this war isn't over there. It's not like World War II or something where they leave and then they're away, and it's really just camaraderie between soldiers together. These people, the battlefield happened in their front yards, and their wives and children were coming and going, and they were seeing them. And so I realized for television drama, as it started to expand from a play, it's perfect. That's what you want in television. In a feature film, you'd probably do a much like Gettysburg and Guns and Generals, you'd move more into a war story. But in television is about families and relationships, and the emotions that connect people's lives, whether they're friends, whether they're enemies, and that sort of thing. And then with the Grant and Lee arc, another good dramatic, and you can't make this stuff up. As I started to read it, I thought, why do we see movies of, like North and South that are just made up stories? The stories of the real people are much more fascinating. And but you can't make it up. People would say, if you made it up, this is what's the word I'm looking for? They just say you're embellishing. I think about when Sherman loses his son to typhoid fever. He brings him to the camps in Vicksburg, and they're headed up to Memphis, and the kid dies. And Sherman, before that, had been very much against sort of the total war philosophy that Grant adopted and got Sherman to become a very big proponent of. Sherman comes from being the superintendent at what's now LSU, the Louisiana Military Academy, and loved the South. He loved the people of the South. He made an impassioned speech to them not to go into this war. Now, in my family, when you grow up, Sherman is like the devil. But here's a guy who really wasn't that way until after his son dies. And he starts to believe that if we hadn't brought our boy to this war, and this war hadn't have been started by them, my son Willie would still be alive. And I think that crystallized in him, and that steeled his heart and allowed him to do what he did later in Georgia and the Carolinas. That's what television is about. And it's about that relationship with the son, the relationship with his wife, and the relationship with the people in the South that he loved, and watching that crumble, rather than seeing Sherman, the firing devil, marauding through the South. So the film itself began to follow these generals and follow the group of generals that Grant came to know and met at West Point, went to the Mexican War, fought in the Mexican War side by side, and then started to drift apart. Another one, which, again, you can't make this stuff up, is, James Longstreet is his wife's cousin. And he's the best man at Grant's wedding. And then they have to fight each other. And there was a point I found, and I'll get into some of the research, because it was fun digging this stuff up, and having my hand held and directed to where to find it, because I would never have been able to do this myself, is before Chattanooga, Grant, he's had an accident on a horse in New Orleans, he's recuperating, his wife comes to visit him, and there's a conversation, you can read it, I forgot where I read it or who told me about it, but he asks his wife if she got word to the Longstreets with their condolences for the death, about the death of three of James Longstreet's children to scarlet fever the year before. And it's that stuff that I really started to, write the film about. The other thing I was going to say is, for a dramatist, when you look at Grant and you look at Lee's background, his trajectory from his father, and then I think the shame he felt about his father and his father's failings later in life, the connection he had with Washington, his desire to marry the heir to George Washington. I think Lee was moving his way to be a president of the United States, and he might very well could have been if the Civil War had not happened. He ends up a teacher. Grant didn't want to go to West Point. When he did, he came out of there hoping to be a math professor. He said that at West Point they would look favorably if he would apply after graduation to be a professor there. All Grant ever wanted to do was be a teacher. And so in a dramatic tale, you have the man who's built to be president going this way and crossing that trajectory. The one that should have been president ends up a teacher. The one that wanted to be a teacher ends up president. I think that is a great framework for the larger story. And then how great does that story become?
So, Michael, obviously you're now moving forward with a massive Kickstarter campaign. And I wondered if you could talk about kind of how you've approached this with Kickstarter, kind of what your goals are from this campaign in terms of funding, and in terms of the incentives that you can provide to those who are contributing towards this production.
Certainly, Dave. Kickstarter, so it begins with that comment, and I start looking into it and reading about all crowdfunding. Certainly there's the success of with Rob Thomas with the Veronica Mars film that he made from his series. Zach Braff had another personal project he did. They raised quite a bit of money. Our idea was, we use Kickstarter because it's all or nothing. When people pledge to it, you have to make your goal, or then the whole thing's called off, no one spent a dime or anything else. I'm comfortable with that because if we don't reach our goal, I couldn't provide any of the rewards I'm offering. And what I wanted to do different from what other people in film have done with Kickstarter is Kickstarter talks about community outreach. And your campaign is to draw community into a shared vision of a project, be it a technological device, an artistic work, or a film. And the rewards, kind of standard rewards, move up from, we have what most of them have. You get access to a weekly production blog for $2. You get a script. Most of them give you the script when the film's finished. Filmmakers are very finicky about providing a script. That's where I started to go, no, that's not right. If I'm funding my film without a studio and half my funding is coming from the fans, they get the shooting script the day we start. They need to be right on track with their project. And that developed in the conversations with my team of what if we can bring everyone all the way through production. Of course, we have the T-shirts and the special haversack, we call it, that has the DVD in it. We have the downloads. We have the music. But then it kind of goes up and we get a little bit more interesting. Well, people are precious about people being on the set. And some of these things have had, 10 visitors over the course of production come visit the set. Of course, we have that. But then we thought, well, what if people don't want to come to the set but really want an experience? So we decided to build in a prize or a reward, whatever they call it, of webcams. Webcams in the production office, near the trailers, on the set, near the video village where the director's sitting, so that you can check in anytime 24/7 and see what's happening in production. You are there. It's as if you're on the set. Then it moved into gifts for departments where you can work with CGI. And the CGI team, we use a group out of Czechoslovakia, terrific CGI group, done most of McHale's films. And the idea, they were completely up for it, is as they're generating the art that they're going to use, allowing the people that have pledged on that level to see it and preview it. And what we get is, because a lot of these people are going to be experts, and in Czechoslovakia, they're going to do some of the battle scenes and build it out and have the troops moving in the flags. I guarantee you the people that do this CGI thing will be telling them, you know what, you're going to need to use a different flag, or that isn't right, and it's going to make our project better. Then it's then it goes up to being an extra in it. There's a place where I'm allowing 3 or 4 people can ask me to write them a role of a historical character, and they will be in. I will write them a role for that, and they'll be in it. Of course, they still get all the DVDs and the T-shirts, and it all rolls backwards. Casting, another one. We have to cast Lincoln. We have to cast Jefferson Davis. We have to cast. There's a lot of Stonewall Jackson now. That's going to be a lot of fun. There are a lot of actors that are going to come to that. I think there's a lot of people that will be interested in what goes on in casting. How does that work? And so through the casting process, we're going to be allowing people to come and help us cast. Be there, be in the discussion. When the actor leaves, you're in the discussion. And if actor X, who we all saw win an Emmy, 3 years ago or whatever, did a lousy job, tell us, and maybe we want, maybe we'll go with someone else. And it's the idea of the community stays with us all the way through production to once the director's cut's finished. Now, everyone who goes on this thing, and we're going to do a series of screenings across the country, and there are 150 participants each. I think it's maybe 300, where you got to come to an unfinished version. Typically, at that point in the filmmaking process, that's when we show it to the studio, and the studio gives us their notes. They go, well, wait, this is the shooting script, this is what you shot, this is how you put it together, we'd really prefer it this way, or could you do that, or that scene doesn't land hard enough. We're going to have those screenings and the audience participation in a panel to give us those notes. Give us the notes the studio would give us. And we're going to do those in, I think it's 8 cities, and if that's popular, we'll expand it to keep expanding out to the cities on that. All the way up to the premiere and being involved at that and that level. I think in this way, this whole idea of community I've had since the first time I waded into Civil War talk and got blasted by 100 cannons. You don't know what you're talking about. From that very moment that I decided to share with people to Facebook, where I fondly call the great people. There's 5,000 people thereabouts who are participating and following it day to day, and I try and communicate with them every day. I call them the First Brigade, and from that it started to build, and then it starts to build, and the Kickstarter seemed just the natural progression of this. And a Kickstarter campaign, that includes everyone throughout, and that's kind of our thing behind it. It's the most ambitious campaign Kickstarter's done for a film. They have told us, however, they think it has a very good chance of going, and they're very hopeful that it does because of this community outreach aspect I've built into it. It's not just T-shirts, go to a screening, here's your DVD, thanks for your support. I'm doing something a little bit different.
Now, Michael, I wonder if you could speak just a little bit more about cast members for this production. I think before I let you speak, though, I should point out that toappomattox.com, you can see the link down at the bottom of the screen, is a great resource for our viewers, and they can see, and perhaps maybe some of these names, I guarantee you, they may not necessarily recognize a name, but they are going to recognize that face. So for everybody out there, toappomattox.com, definitely you want to go on the website. You can take a look at the cast. But Michael, by all means, why don't you share a little bit with us some of the other cast members?
As I was saying about the cast, is so many of them came to this project. A lot of them are people I've worked with over the years. The fact that they've stayed with it for so long is a tribute to their passion, not only for these scripts and doing the show, but for their country. These are a lot of very patriotic people. We have, at the top, we have Jason O'Mara. We have Damian, he's playing Grant. Damian Lewis is in there playing William Sherman. He's been with it for a long time. Both he and Jason, it's funny because they've been with the project for so long that they've switched roles over and over again as they each star in something new. I get a call and they're like, I don't think, Damian Lewis had been Sherman before Homeland happened. And I remember getting an email from him saying, there's no way I can do Sherman. If you do it this year, I got to take this one. And then maybe you could do McPherson. And, great, I'll do that. And O'Mara had, I think, Life on Mars dropped him from Grant to one role. Then that show ended, and then he was going to be McClellan, and then that changed. And that's been kind of the thing. We have D.B. Sweeney, who you'll recognize. He was in Lonesome Dove. He's an old hand at miniseries. He's playing James Longstreet. Friends from Justified, Walt Goggins and Nick Searcy. Both of them have been big fans of this project, and Walt Goggins is playing Ewell. Nick will be playing Joe Johnson. Who else we have that would be fun? Kim Delaney. This is a great story. I don't know Kim Delaney. I know who she is. Everyone recognizes she, Army Wives and that sort of thing. I'm at a Dodger game with the head of the film commission for, I guess it was Philadelphia. And we were thinking of doing it there. It's a huge, wonderful facility there. And we were planning when this was going to be, I think we were thinking we were going to have it out by 2012. Or no, 2013, because this was 2012. Anyway, we're sitting there at the Dodger game. I'm a guest of the Phillies were playing. That's why she had tickets. Having a great time. And I see coming in the row is Kim Delaney. I recognize her. And she sits next to me. Or I guess she was next to me, but one behind. And I introduced myself. I said hello. And somehow I guess it was she was doing Army Wives in Charleston. And we were talking. I asked her about when the 150th happened there. I don't know if she knew about it, with Fort Sumter, because they fired the cannons at 4 a.m. and woke everyone up in the city. And we didn't really pay much attention to the game because it turns out that she loves history. The woman is passionate about it and knows so much that we're just, I'm not even watching the game. We're talking the whole time. And by the end of that conversation, I'm like, I'll send you the script. She goes, send me the script, but I'm already in. Stephen Lang the same way. He's he had wanted very much to play Lincoln, and now he's doing the Jim Cameron films, the Avatar sequels. I guess he plays sort of the Darth Vader character in it because I thought he died in the first one and they rebuilt him or something. But anyway, he calls me and says, I can't do Lincoln. I go, I know. I kind of say, I knew I was going to get this call. I go, I completely understand. What a great thing for you and for your career to finally get such a huge movie role for such a great actor. And he says, so I'd like to play John Brown. He goes, you hang me in the first episode, so I know you won't be asking me back. Jim Cameron won't get mad about that. I can do it. And that's kind of how this cast has all come together. And it's been a great thing. And as the cast has molded and changed, we've created this fraternity. And we all are everyone's waiting and hoping that it happens. And we've all and what I really love about this is that this group of us, and I think it's up to about 25 people who are confirmed, and hopefully we'll be able to make the deal, and hopefully they'll be available the days we're shooting. We all get along really well. It's become kind of like a family, and that's what you really want on a set, because when the day does get long, when the weather isn't right, when the take isn't going, and things actors and crew and producers like me get absolutely frustrated. McClellan never gets frustrated. He's one of those. That's why I have that director. But everyone gets frustrated, and to know that everyone is as in it like a fraternal, group, is going to make it just quite a wonderful experience. These people are absolutely. I am blessed to have these people all together on this.
Now, I'm glad you did mention country music, because for our country music fans out there, I think they're going to be in for a pleasant surprise. So why don't you share a little bit about those plans as part of the production?
This was one of my in the first year or something with it, when I wasn't getting a lot of traction, my brain started, what can I do to change this up and make this work? And I just knew I needed to add some other element, because it was going to be in a very expensive 10 hours and something to drive audience to it. At the same time, I was writing and doing a CSI episode, and I met Rascal Flatts. The idea was to kill one of them off, or attempted murder on one of them, and that was the episode. And again, we got to talking between takes, and I think it's Gary LeVox had told me that his farm is on part of the national battlefield, and there's actually graves there that they look after and that sort of thing. It's private property. And so I said, oh, you had Civil War. Let me tell you about this. And we spent the next week during production talking about this project and doing it. And they left, and they did a great job, and it was one of the highest rated episodes CSI had, probably the highest one that year. They called me back, and they said, how can we be in this? How can we be involved? And then it clicks in my head. Country music's audience is so devoted, very country-centric, very Americana. And I said, well, whatever way you'd like to, I'd love to have you guys act. You did a great job for me on the show. I think there's 85 speaking roles, so it's not going to be a problem finding your role. And I said, and I just kind of threw it out there. I go, would you want to do any music? That conversation developed into a conversation with DeMarcus over the orchestral score. And, I didn't know his background, but he was, he has a degree in music, and he studied composition and not just the playing in a band. And his score, what I've heard of it, and it's genius. It reminds me stylistically of what John Williams did with Star Wars, where each character has a theme, where the Empire has their theme that's recognizable, the Rebels have theirs, and he's done that with the North and the South, and each general has it there, and it's absolutely beautiful. It's going to be an amazing television score. There hasn't been one like it for a long time. And my feeling is pack it wall to wall with music. That's what we like to do in TV. So we're thrilled about that, and that's where the music's going. It is a wonderful audience. A lot of these, they're like the cast. They're doing this because they like the project, and it's an interesting project to be working on. But also they like the message. Many of them are parents, like I am, and we all kind of feel the Civil War education has not been kept up as well as it could have. I don't think it was even all that good when I was in school. I remember that they taught us there was a Civil War, the slavery issue, Lincoln's assassination, and a battle called Gettysburg. And you learned that in 5th grade, then you learned the same thing in 8th grade, and then the same thing in 10th grade, and they figured you knew the Civil War. So many of us want to move so much more to the public. education is a part of this, and a lot of the scholars that we've worked with have offered to help write the study guides that will go along with the script. This is something that we should play, that should go to schools. My kids, when they were in high school and junior high, were watching, what did they watch? They watched it, Ken Burns, but when you're 13 or 14 years old, you don't want to watch a slideshow. And they always liked the World War II part because the schools always show Band of Brothers or Private Ryan, and I think this will be something that educators can use and talk about. The accuracy is at the very highest level. And then the places, here's a good example. When we get to Lincoln and his cabinet, you have Lincoln and Stanton. Well, of course, there's Simon Cameron, was the Secretary of War before Stanton, but in television, I can't put him in one scene and say, and Lincoln's Secretary of War is Mr. Cameron here, and then one scene later, it's a guy named Stanton. The audience, So a study guide question would be, in the series you just watched, Stanton was it, but who was the first Secretary of War? And get the topic so you can build off the series as an educator into some of the other things that were left out or that maybe were a little bit different, and that sort of thing. So we're excited about that. And the music, those country music artists are all involved and anxious to be part of the educational component as well.
Well, Michael, this sounds like an amazing project. And again, everyone, it's to Appomattox. The Kickstarter fundraising starts on Wednesday, April 16th. For those of you who follow us on Facebook, you'll be sure to be seeing the link being sent out by us on more than one occasion. So it'll be sent to you in that format from us. But obviously, Michael, really promising project here. I hope that you are met with just unbelievable success in terms of the finances on this, and that you're going to generate certainly a lot of interest on the studio end as well. So I wish you, on behalf of Monitor folks, as well as a lot of Civil War historians out there, the best of luck moving forward. And perhaps we can have you back on again to get a little bit of a progress update on how things are going.
I would love to. Let's hope we have a progress update. If we do, and we're there, we'll do this again in July, the day we start shooting, or the day after, maybe. I'd love to talk to you again, and this has been quite a pleasure. Thank you for the generous amount of time you've given me, and I just hope everyone comes and visits our Kickstarter site. There's one thing also that I'm doing a little different with Kickstarter. People, like I said, people are precious. Filmmakers are precious with their stuff. I'm not all that precious with what I've done because I think it belongs to everyone. And one of the things we have just for going to the site is you can download for free the third episode, which is the Battle of Shiloh. And in that way, you can see if what I'm saying is true at all, or if I really just was a hack writer and it's a bunch of junk. But I think you'll like it.
All right.